Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Shelby Hewitt? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Shelby Hewitt was born on March 19, 1991, in the state of Massachusetts. Her parents, Malcolm and Lorraine Hewitt, lived in the town of Sharon, which is 35 minutes south of Boston. Malcolm worked as a photographer and in fast food restaurants. Lorraine worked for an investment company. The family had money problems, and on multiple occasions, Shelby's father filed for bankruptcy relief. Shelby attended Sharon High School and initially seemed to be doing well. She was described as outgoing, goofy, and quirky. Later in high school, she struggled academically and had difficulty regulating her emotions. Eventually, she was enrolled in a program for students with mental health symptoms. After graduating from high school, Shelby enrolled in a local college known for counseling and social work programs. In 2013, she earned a bachelor's degree in human development and counseling psychology. In 2016, she earned a master's degree in school counseling from a different college. The Department of Children and Families, otherwise known as DCF, hired Shelby as a social worker. This is a little confusing because Shelby did not actually have social worker identity. Again, she studied school counseling. The reason she was referred to as a social worker is that's how DCF named the position. Anyone hired into that position, regardless of their background, would be called a social worker. Usually these positions require a master's degree in a related field. This happens to other professions as well. For example, some government agencies have a position called mental health counselor, but the position doesn't require having counselor identity. Anyone hired for the job is referred to as a mental health counselor. Shelby stayed in her social worker position with DCF until 2018, when she left the department for a few years. It's not clear why she left, but in 2018, both her mother and her maternal grandfather died a few months apart. Shelby received a substantial inheritance, which may have been over $1 million. On December 5, 2021, Shelby returned to DCF as a social worker with a salary of about $51,000 a year. The next day, she went to the website GoDaddy.com and purchased the domain masstate.us, like massstate.us. This domain was designed to be confused with the official state of Massachusetts domain, state.ma.us. Shelby then fabricated a DCF social worker named Michael Kronetsky and assigned him an official-looking email address using the domain she purchased. Several months later, she invented another social worker named Michelle Delphi, giving her an email as well. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. In early 2022, while Shelby was still working at DCF, she enrolled herself at a treatment facility called Walden Behavioral Care. This facility specialized in treating eating disorders. There's nothing wrong with going to this type of facility, but Shelby did not enroll as herself. Rather, she used a fake identity, namely a 13-year-old homeless trafficking survivor named Ellie Alessandra Blake. 30-year-old Shelby tried to convince people she was 13, and she was incredibly successful. People at the facility believed that Shelby was Ellie Blake. A woman named Rebecca Burnett worked as a therapist at the facility. She had a master's degree in social work and was a licensed social worker. Eventually, Shelby, again posing as Ellie Blake, moved in with Rebecca and Rebecca's partner, John Smith. The couple lived in a 1,300-square-foot condominium in the Jamaica Plain neighborhood of Boston. The authorities would later say that the couple did not go through the official foster care process. It appears as though Rebecca and John believed they were helping a teenage trauma victim. They did not know that Shelby was an adult pretending to be a teenager. In September 2022, Shelby started a new phase of her master plan. She transformed into a 16-year-old named Daniela Blake Herrera and enrolled at the Jeremiah E. Burke High School in Dorchester. Shelby allegedly forged documents to do this, but even with the forgeries, she did not have all the documentation necessary. She was able to exploit a federal law that allows children in foster care to be immediately enrolled in school even without initially presenting documentation. During the same month that she time-traveled and became a high school student again, Shelby used cash to purchase a $377,000 two-bedroom condominium in the town of Canton. Her classmates at the high school thought it was unusual that Shelby was driving a car and had other items that were not cheap, but for the most part, she managed to avoid arousing suspicion. Shelby even played on the basketball team, although she stepped away from the camera when the team photograph was captured. In April 2023, Shelby transferred to Brighton High School in Brighton, Massachusetts. At this point, she was still pretending to be Daniela. Using the domain that she purchased, Shelby sent emails from the fabricated social worker, Michelle, asking that Daniela's academic burden be reduced. Shelby was interested in more classes like gym or art, and not happy about taking U.S. history. So Shelby was not motivated to learn anything in school. One could argue she was doing a pretty good job impersonating a typical high school student. In June 2023, Shelby left Brighton High School and tried something different. On June 8, she enrolled at the English High School in the Jamaica Plain neighborhood using the Ellie Blake identity. Shelby was pretending to be in the 7th grade, which was a grade offered in this high school. The school had grades 7 through 12. The students at the school appeared to be a little bit more alarmed by Shelby's appearance than students from the other schools. After all, Shelby had just dropped 3 more years, from 16 to 13. The students wondered how hard her life must have been to look that way in the 7th grade. She must have had 13 hard years. They teased her, saying that she looked like she was 30. The students, of course, were incorrect. Shelby was actually 32 at the time. On June 13, Shelby sent an email from the non-existent social worker Michelle to a guidance counselor at the English High School. The email talked about how the students were making fun of Ellie Blake. She was really sensitive about people commenting on her face and how she looked older. It was a huge trigger point for her. A genetic condition is what caused the older appearance. Officials talked to the offending students and tried to resolve the matter in a sensitive way. For whatever reason, Shelby was not satisfied. On the next day, June 14, John Smith picked up Ellie Blake from the school and said he was moving her to a private Catholic school in Brighton. Around this time, the principal of the school noticed that the domain used in Michelle Delphi's email was not the official one of state.ma.us. The school called DCF looking for Michelle Delphi, but of course she did not work there because Shelby had fabricated her. At this point, school officials contacted the police. When the police spoke to Shelby, she initially denied wrongdoing, but then admitted that she was a fraud. She explained that she just wanted to have a family. The police found many forged documents in Shelby's bedroom. Shelby was arrested and charged with 3 counts of document forgery, 2 counts of common law forgery, and 1 count each of identity fraud, larceny over $1,200, uttering false or forged documents, and violating public employee standards of conduct. On February 6, 2023, Shelby resigned from her position at DCF, mostly because of the impersonating a high school student part. At the time I'm making this video, Shelby Hewitt is still facing charges. Her attorney stated that Shelby has a long and well-documented history of mental health challenges. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. During the entire time Shelby was pretending to be a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old, she continued to work full-time as a DCF social worker. These types of government agencies are notorious for 2 problems. The first one is overworking the social workers. The second one is losing track of the social workers. This position has the strange distinction of being a job where an employee can work themselves to death or simply disappear for a while. DCF social workers are not supervised very closely, and of course their clients are probably not going to say anything if the social workers don't show up. Many people don't want to be involved with DCF in the first place. Shelby's behavior exposed and embarrassed the leadership at DCF and raised serious questions about how taxpayer money is being spent. Item number 2, when Shelby was in school as 16-year-old Daniela, she stood out more for her odd behavior than her older appearance. Students said that Shelby told stories about herself which were sometimes inconsistent. She complained that her foster mother was controlling and did not give her enough money for food. Shelby stated that she was homeless, yet she had her own car. She claimed that both her parents died from a drug overdose. In another version of her story, her father had drug problems and was in prison. Shelby said that she moved to the United States from Colombia, yet did not appear to speak Spanish. One would think that Shelby would have worked diligently to maintain her cover story, but she didn't make a great effort to stay in disguise. Later, she made another mistake when she used the name Ellie Blake. This name was suspicious. It is a character from the 2018 Disney Channel musical adaptation of Freaky Friday, where a teenage girl and her mother switch bodies, forcing the mother to go to high school in her teenage daughter's body. Ellie Blake was the daughter. Item number 3. The role that Rebecca and John played in this story is kind of a mystery. They have never been charged with any crime, yet they both retained defense attorneys. The lawyers representing them released a statement which read, quote, "John and Rebecca are among numerous people who genuinely believed a desperate young person was in need," unquote. I would be surprised if the couple was involved in any criminal wrongdoing, but Rebecca's behavior was certainly not wise. A psychotherapist should never bring a client home from a treatment facility. This boundary-crossing behavior is just asking for trouble. Item number 4. As I mentioned, Shelby's attorney stated that Shelby had mental health challenges, but never specified any kind of diagnosis. There's no way to know what could be happening with Shelby. She could have personality pathology, a major mood disorder, a psychotic disorder. She may not have any diagnosis at all. Maybe she is simply lying. In other notorious cases where an adult pretends to be a teenager, the term pathological lying is often brought up. This is a condition, not a mental disorder. A person cannot be diagnosed with pathological lying. This condition can exist separate of a mental health diagnosis or in conjunction with a few different disorders, including factitious disorder, schizophrenia, and cluster B personality pathology. Pathological lying involves chronic and excessive lying, which appears to be driven by a lack of self-control. It usually expresses as a trait rather than being episodic. So it's not like the person is deceptive for a few months, then they stop lying for a year, only to return to deceptive behavior. Usually, once they start lying, they continue this behavior for life. It's just like a personality trait. The tendency to be deceptive does not change. The lies told by a pathological liar are usually not obviously absurd or bizarre. Rather, they are plausible. In Shelby's case, her central prevarication involved being a teenager. However, she eventually revealed inconsistencies in her story. She was unable to keep the lies straight. The motive for pathological lying is not external gain, rather internal gratification. Pathological liars often create a narrative that makes them the center of attention, whether they are playing the hero or the victim. It's almost like they are trying to take a fantasy and force it to be a reality. They cannot stand being separated from their dream world, so they create it, even if that causes a nightmare for everyone else. Some conceptualizations of pathological lying categorize the liar as suffering from delusions, but others say that the liar has extreme personality traits. Maybe there is truth in both of these conceptualizations. Now moving to my final thoughts. As I mentioned, there's no way to know with certainty what happened in the case of Shelby Hewitt. Perhaps Shelby wanted to relive or reconstruct a challenging period in her life, as if being accepted and liked in high school, even as a fraud, would heal those old wounds. This is similar to time travel. She went back in time to make things right. One thing's for sure, she did not go back to high school for an academic challenge. One can only hope that Shelby's resistance to studying history does not result in her repeating it. Those are my thoughts on the case of Shelby Hewitt. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.